What is going on YouTube? Running Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is our Denver Broncos offseason review. Going to be talking about this year's free agency, this year's draft, last year, a lot of the stuff, everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Not much good with the Denver Broncos this year, or last year really, I should say. But we'll see what they can do. Had a very good draft in my opinion, and we're here to talk about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you have not already, please leave a like down below on this video and any other video that you watch. Subscribe, share this with your friends, and we've released AFC East, AFC South, and AFC North, all team review videos, and right now we're working through the AFC West with obviously just released our Chargers offseason review last week. That was a lot of fun to talk about Justin Herbert and the Chargers. It's going to be a very interesting team to watch in the next few years. So check those videos out. It's all in one playlist, so it's easy to find. And follow our social media pages at runandgun_sports on Instagram and at runandgunsports on TikTok. And after we finish the AFC, we'll be talking about the NFC. And let's get right into the video. The Broncos in 2020 went 5-11. 7 of those losses were to playoff teams, and 2 of them to the Kansas City Chiefs in division rivals. And Drew Lock, we'll just address the elephant in the room. A lot of times I like to open up these type of videos with a positive for each team, but the Broncos, their Drew Lock is the elephant in the room, as I mentioned, and it's a lot of people like to call him a bust and say he's not very good. And there's a very good argument to that. His stats are not very impressive, especially for a team like the Broncos, who have had a rich tradition of quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, John Elway, and ever since Peyton Manning left after that Super Bowl, it's gone downhill. Quarterback play extremely has gone downhill. Many different guys in there, and drafted Drew Lock in the 2018 draft, and 2019 draft, and a lot of people expected more from him, and maybe he is a bust, but I think that this year is his year to prove whether or not he's a bust or not, and silence the critics or prove him right. He's got 2 options, and it's this year he's on the hot seat for players really, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can remove that bust title when people say his name, or whether he'll be considered a bust, and Broncos have another quarterback fail, and wouldn't shock me either way. But I am a fan of Drew Lock myself. I think he's a pretty good player. I don't think that he's a bust quite yet, but if, like I mentioned, this is his year to turn it around, and he needs to do it quickly. And I think that his stats last year are not very good at all, especially considering that he was very not hyped, but he had a lot of attention coming out of college. He wasn't as hyped up as Joe Burrow or Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. He wasn't the top quarterback picked in his draft class, but he did have a lot of attention coming out of college, and so far he has not been able to live up to it and show out in the NFL. And it shows. Last year he had 2,933 yards, ranked 21st in the NFL, only 16 touchdowns, ranked 20th in the NFL, 48.8 QBR, 29th in the NFL, 15 interceptions, tied 34th in the NFL. Those stats are just remarkably terrible, especially if Drew Lock is your franchise guy. John Elway, the GM of the Broncos, sure thinks that so. But I think that those stats just prove you not. You can't have your franchise quarterback ranking outside of the ranking in the bottom half of all those stats. And QBR might be the most important stat there is. Just quarterback efficiency is all it is. And 29th, that's 3rd worst in the NFL out of starting quarterbacks. And interceptions, 34th. There's 32 teams in the NFL. Each team has 1 quarterback. He's outside. There's backup quarterbacks who are doing better than him, which is just terribly sad to see, and is extremely evident is why people point to Drew Lock as a bust. And it's a huge reason that the Broncos have a struggling season and that they can't get much done on the offensive side of the ball, despite losing Courtland Sutton in week 2, I believe it was. Lost him very early, but he needs to be able to distribute the ball to other receivers. He is Jerry Judy, one of the best receivers coming out of the 2020 draft class. He was very good in college, and I think he can do fine in the NFL. He does have a few drops, but I think he'll have no problems transitioning to the NFL if he can get a good quarterback to throw to him. And the interceptions has been a problem. Drew Lock will throw the ball when his receivers aren't even looking at him, and he'll get picked off. It's just not good quarterback play at all, and the Broncos need good quarterback play. Any team really needs good quarterback play, especially with a team like the Broncos who don't have that good of receivers, but they have decent receivers. No offense, a very good tight end. Jerry Judy, as I mentioned, is a good receiver, and we'll see what happens, but I think that it's the quarterbacking play that's really holding them back. But I do believe in Drew Lock. I think that this year, though, is his make or break season, and if he fails, he will be on the bench for the rest of his NFL career. If he succeeds, he could be the franchise quarterback of the Denver Broncos. I don't think he has a chance to do as well as Justin Herbert and the Chargers will do this year, or the Kansas City Chiefs just within their division. They'll probably be fourth in their division this year. But I think that honestly, he can compete for it, and I don't think he'll ever make the playoffs. It's just the position he's in is very unfortunate. Drafted to not the greatest team at the time, but really they've been in rebuild mode. But crazier things have happened. But like I said, I believe in him. It's just the surrounding cast is not that good. But the defense is very solid, which moves us into our defensive breakdown really on the season. They ranked sixth in the NFL, ninth versus the pass, and fifth versus the rush. And Justin Simmons really the leader of why they're ninth in the top 10 for pass rankings in the NFL. Very solid player in 2020, 96 total tackles, 77 solo tackles, 5 interceptions, and 9 pass deflections. And the Broncos made a very good move this offseason, franchise tagging him. That's one of the better moves in free agency from the Broncos we've seen in a while. But picking up his franchise tag and not having to spend a lot of money on him, and not buying into a multiple year deal is very good, and I like the move a lot. He's really going to add a lot of value to that team, and he's quite young, so it's in my opinion, a very, very good move for John Elway and the Denver Broncos front office, and I approve of it a lot. And the rush is really impacted by Bradley Chubb, outside linebacker. He had a very good season this year. 26 solo tackles, 42 total tackles, 7.5 sacks. And, he leads that team. Von Miller didn't play last year, and he may not play this year in the NFL in general, but maybe not for the Broncos if he decides to come back. Had some legal troubles as well, but really, I think that Bradley Chubb stepped up big time in the NFL, especially football. In most sports, one guy goes down, it's the next man up, and it's why you see so many teams. That's why having depth matters, and that's why the teams with depth often win more games, because someone goes down, it's not the end of their season. If they lose a key player, they have guys behind them who can do it maybe just as well, if not better. Bradley Chubb, very young himself. He's going to be around in the league for a while, and he's a very good player, and I'm really impressed by him, the way he was able to step up for the Denver Broncos this year and really give that defense a boost. Moving on, though, the Broncos gave up an average of 23.0625 points, and, that's not too bad. 23 points is not the worst, but you want to try and give up around 20 points per game is pretty good. And, they didn't have help from their offense, and obviously the offense struggled, as I mentioned. We could talk about the offense for this entire episode, but the offense only averaged 20 points per game, and that's not very good. That's giving every team that you face that's giving them what you want. If you can give up 20 points to a team and every game, and your offense can outscore, it's an easy win. And that's why the Broncos only won 5 football games this year, and we're picking in the ninth overall pick. And I think that it's just not, you have to have help both sides of the ball, and football is the ultimate team sport in my opinion by far. You can't, this is a perfect example. 23 points from the defense giving up, but 20 points from the offense. You're not going to win games like that, and you have to have them working together, and it just doesn't help at all. and just a perfect example why football really is a team sport. The Broncos this year were outscored 357 to 323, a 34-point difference, which really, in all honesty, is not that bad. But the offense, just they tended to score a lot of their points in garbage time this year. You look at a lot of their points, and but they need to average more than 20 points per game. That's pretty bad, and that ranked in the bottom half of the league. And just you can't have that if you're gonna have your quarterback, your franchise quarterback, help you out. That's just not gonna happen, and you need to score more than 20 points per game. Moving on to the draft class this year, as I mentioned, I thought they had a very good draft class. Round one, with the ninth overall pick, Broncos selected Patrick Surtain, cornerback out of Alabama. Very good pick, in my opinion, adding depth to that secondary, which is going to be key, especially with some older guys in that secondary. He's going to help that team out a ton. His 3 years at Alabama, he had 111 total tackles, 78 solo tackles, 25 pass deflections, and 4 forced fumbles and 4 interceptions. So very solid player all around. Patrick Surtain, he can cover, he can tackle, and just a great player. Started as a freshman at Alabama. That says something. You know that he's very talented if you can start as a freshman under Nick Saban, because Nick Saban has 5 stars all around the board, and Patrick Surtain starting as a freshman. Anyone who can start as a freshman for Alabama has got a very, very good shot being drafted into the NFL, let alone being a first-round draft pick and in the top 10. Moving on to the second round, with the 35th overall pick, the Broncos selected Javonte Williams, running back from North Carolina. Very good player as well, very versatile, and he can catch the ball, he can run the ball, but it's going to add to the depth behind Melvin Gordon, who had a okay year this year. He's had way better years, but I think that it's going to help a lot. Melvin Gordon been somewhat injured, and having Javonte Williams is really going to help him out a lot. Some people thought he'd go in the first round, but his 3 years at North Carolina, 2,297 yards, 29 touchdowns, and that is his rushing stats. For his receiving stats, he had 50 receptions, 539 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So very good stats there, but all that tells me is just how good Nadia Harris really is. And Javonte Williams had 29 touchdowns in 3 years. Meanwhile, Nadia Harris, who's in a run or in a pass-oriented offense, which is crazy because Nick Saban doesn't normally have a pass-oriented offense, but this year it definitely was with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. But Najee Harris had 26 touchdowns this season in one season, and people try to compare all these running backs to Najee Harris, but I don't even think it's a comparison. So that's just really what those stats make me think of immediately, just looking at it. That Najee Harris is just such a solid player. He's so good, and just very random, but just very true at the same time. The stats don't lie, and Najee Harris is going to have a great career in the NFL with Pittsburgh. Moving on to the third round, 98th overall pick, the Broncos picked up Quinn Miners, a Division III offensive lineman from Wisconsin Whitewater. Yes, a Division III school. You heard me right. Very good story. I mean, inspiring to a lot of people who are at smaller colleges. But in the Senior Bowl, he played very well. Got a Senior Bowl invite, which is a very impressive. And he did very well in the Senior Bowl. And I was really impressed with him, and going up against Division I guys, he looked like a Division I guy himself, and so really good pick by the Denver Broncos. In the fifth round, the Denver Broncos selected Jamar Johnson, safety out of Indiana, really just adding depth, especially with Kareem Jackson back there, a little bit older guy, and I think that it's going to help add depth. As I mentioned, depth is so important, especially last year when we saw so many players getting injured in the NFL. And so, good move, in my opinion. Jamar Johnson is a very good player at the college level. We'll see if he can transition to the NFL. Sixth round, they picked up wide receiver Seth Williams from Auburn, and very good receiver as well, adding depth. They really didn't have depth at receiver this year, and so good move, in my opinion. My 2021 projection for the Denver Broncos is, I think that truthfully the entire AFC West has quite an easy schedule, and the out of division and conference games are quite easy. And I think the Broncos, if they can put the pieces together, and Drew Lock plays very well, think they could go 9-8. Honestly, that's a huge jump from 5-11 to 9-8, but I think it's doable for the Denver Broncos. And that will wrap it up for today's video. If you guys have not already, please leave a like down below, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Thank you.